Yo guys! It's your friend here, bringing you another awesome Naruto what-if tale. Today we are going to see what if Naruto formed a forbidden harem with female Orochimaru. Part 2. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Naruto was blushing up a storm as he tried to perform a delicate surgery on a winded animal. Kiko had brought in a bunch of rats, mice and other creatures such as cats and dogs. They were all suffering small wounds, though some of the bigger animals would require immediate medical care if they didn't want to lose a limb or something. The goal of today's lesson was to get the medics in training some hands-on experience. They also needed to learn how to work under pressure and keep their focus no matter what kinds of distractions there were. Lemon scene happened as Kiko walked off to check on the other students and their progress. Naruto groaned into his hands and said, "Damn, it's such a funking tease, I swear." Sighing softly, he looked at his rat to see it was barely clinging to life. Now activating his technique again, he began the healing process once more. "Please don't die, little one, I'm sorry for making things worse." Meanwhile, from where they were in the classroom, Sakura and Hinata smirked at each other. "Poor Naruto, ___. Kiko enjoyed that way too much," Sakura said. Hinata giggled to herself as she finished healing the dog she was tending to. "You would have loved to do that to him too, don't deny it." The pin cat Smir ked at her for a moment before she finished healing the cat she had been working on. "I'm not denying it, I just like to think you and I would take it a step further. Screw the class, funking on the teacher desk would be wonderful." Hinata giggled pervertedly and said, "Oh, most definitely, maybe he'll ravish us later when we get to be alone. Ooh, the things we could get up to." Hinata like eyes. Sakura giggled and said, "Talking about yourself in the third person now." Hinata shrugged and said, "If it gets the point across, then sure, I think I might just ambush him later and funk his brains out." The peanut smirked at her and said, My, someone's feeling rather bold. As freedom from your clan really that freeing? You seem to be in a much better mood these days." The lavender-eyed beauty nodded happily and said, "Oh, it's a wonderful feeling, Sakura. No more of their abuse, no more scorn and hatred. I can finally be open about my feelings and speak my mind. I don't have to play the perfect emotionless little princess. I'm finally free and I feel fantastic now. I can openly express my feelings for Naruto, __, and I can have sex with him whenever I want." After a moment she began to giggle pervertedly to herself. "Ooh, I can't wait to give birth to his children. We have the most wonderful family." Sakura nodded in agreement. "Oh yeah, I can't wait to be married. I don't even care if we have children before we're officially married. I just know I'm truly happy, happier than I've ever been. I don't have to deal with my stupid parents trying to dictate things for me. No more of their __, about winning Sasuke's love just to get it. Is money. Freedom tastes so sweet, and damn does that beat feel great when it's pounding my beak. Just wait until you get to feel it for yourself. Holy __, will you ever be happy? It's wonderful." While the two girls continued to talk with one another with the occasional giggling fit, Naruto couldn't help but shake his head. "I swear girls have no right to call us guys pigs and perverted filth. Girls can be just as if not worse than us guys. I can't complain though, the sex is great." Aura, all her beloved and his girlfriends were safe in a Tekker. Aura wasn't so happy. She was currently disguised as the Jonin sensei of what remained of her gen and team. Looking into their eyes she said, "Dosu was killed the other day. I had hoped to get the three of you out of here and back to Ocker where it's safest, but he was killed led by one of our allies." Zaku scowled and asked, "Who did it and what are we going to do about it?" Aura frowned and said, "Jia is the one responsible for Dok death and her sensei Baki watched it happen. He didn't do anything to stop her. He seemed almost pleased with what Gaia did. Sadly, Gaia is vital to our plans, so I'd rather not target her if we can help it, but Baka needs to die. I won't tolerate that man's actions any longer." Hin frowned slightly and said, "But we can't defeat him yet, so what do you want us to do?" Sensei Bor smiled at her genin and said, "My agents will deal with Baka for now. I'm going to personally train you both until the day of the finals. What I want you two to do is to kill the Janine from Kahakar. I let you decide if you want to kill them during the tournament fair and square, or you can skip the finals and assassinate some of the other Janine watching from the stands there."
Is one Janine in particular I would love to see killed. Zaku asked. Who would that be? Sensei Hin smirked and asked, is it Niji Hyuga? Please say it is. Aura giggled and said, nailed it in one. Knee is rotten to the core. Kinchin, I get the feeling you're more than eager to assassinate him. Strike when everyone else East expects it and end him. Zaku, well, Kin will be busy in the stands. I want you to fight in the finals. Use your best judgment to determine who should live and who should die. Just be careful, okay? Some of your opponents will not be easy to fight and chances are high that we'll be regarded with a great deal of suspicion, especially since certain people won't be there for the final matches. Zaku and Kin nodded, but they refrained from saying anything. They didn't want to let it slip that Nudo was no longer in the village, so instead Kin looked into Aura's eyes and asked, so what would you be teaching us? Ensei. Well, 1 week later, Baki clutched at his side as he tried desperately to escape his assailant. What the hell is going on? Who the hell did I piss off? He thought as he continued to run through the dark and alleyways, hoping to lose his pursuer. After a few minutes, he paused to lean against the wall. He couldn't see too well in the darkness, but he could tell he was bleeding badly. If he didn't get medical help soon, he would likely die within the hour. I never saw it coming. Whoever it is, they're good. As he tried to continue on his way, he slowly stumbled, tripping over his own feet. Falling to his knees, he realized that he was far too woozy to stay on the move, so as quietly as he could he began to crawl along the ground, desperate to get out onto one of the main streets of Koha. Sadly, it was in the dead of night and the likelihood of anyone coming to his rescue were awfully slim. Right as he neared the end of the alley, Baka felt something pierce him through the back. It didn't take long for him to realize that his ascent had stabbed him through the heart. So Chloe's, damn it. As the light left Baki's eyes, his ascent chuckled darkly to herself. Orasam will be done. The gent severed Bak's head from his body before sealing it away inside of the storage scroll. Afterwards they wondered to themselves, now what should I do next? After a moment the unknown agent tapped a finger to their chin. I suppose I could go pay a certain Suna trio visit and give them a little war. But I'd rather not deal with that psycho. If I can help it. Too much of a pain. Shrugging their shoulders, the assassin removed their mask and removed their gear, sealing it away inside of a seal inscribed on their clothes. Once the agent stepped out into the light, their identity was revealed. Sorry honey, but it's high time I do away with you. Then again, you might just see it coming, wouldn't you? Chicago. Giggling to herself, the now revealed Yanera decided to just enjoy a casual stroll throughout the village, aiming to celebrate a job well done. Poor Shikamaru, he's going to lose his dear daddy. I don't want to hurt you, baby, but I can't exactly take you with me either. You're loyal to this village and the Hokage after all. You just wouldn't understand why mommy dearest has to do these things. The next morning the Mari was pacing around in the room she was sharing with her siblings. Damn it, as he something doesn't feel right about this, she said. She was definitely agitated and incredibly nervous at the moment something's happened. Baka-sensei wouldn't just disappear on us like this. Then Kuro sighed and leaned back against the wall. You've got a point, but ranting and raving about it won't solve anything. Besides, what motive could anyone have to kill Baka-sensei? I'm sure Hyun's fine. Deary glared at him for a moment before turning to her little sister Gaia. What do you think? Do you know anything? Gaia stared blankly into Tamar's eyes and said it doesn't matter. The plan doesn't change. Simply because Baki is gone, I will destroy Koha. The blonde frowned and shook her head. I don't know, maybe we should warn the HOK. Before she could say any more, they heard knocking on their door. Quickly rushing over to it, Tamari opened the door, hoping dearly that it was their sensei. However, the one she saw was her dear father. Rasa, eyes widening, she began to tremble in fear. How much did you hear, father? Rasa glared down into his daughter's eyes and said, I heard enough. I do hope you change your mind, Tori. If you betray me, betray us, you will be dealt with appropriately. Traitors are not treated kindly, you know that, so why even entertain the notion of warning that old fool about our plans? The Mari quivered in front of her father. He wasn't exactly the kindest man in the world and she feared him more than any other emotion. I am just worried, can we really trust Aura and Baki-sensei? Brasa shook his head and closed the door behind him. Baki is dead. His body was discovered an hour ago. Nobody knows the identity of his killer. However, I did get in touch with Aura. It would seem Gaia killed an ally of ours. She was not pleased and told me to handle it. I had hoped Baka would have stepped in to prevent you from doing something so foolish. Gaia, it would seem I was wrong. I am highly disappointed in the both of you. Gaia frowned at her father and said, I do not see the problem. That boy was weak and wouldn't have survived long anyways. Why would Aura want such a weak fool in her village? That is not the point here. Gaia bellowed, you don't kill your allies. You're supposed to be able to trust each other, and we can't keep that trust if you decide to be a funking psychopath. So either get yourself under control or I'll deal with you personally. Do you understand me? Gaia glared into Ross's eyes, but she soon looked away, knowing she couldn't challenge her father just yet. You still need me, father. Don't forget that. Stepping up to his daughter, he prepared to slap her, only for Tamari to quickly grab his arm. Please, father, don't do it. If you have to punish someone, then punish me. Rossa shook Tamari off of I am before turning and leveling her with a glare. You're already on thin ice with me as it is, Tamari. You are not to tell the Hokage anything about our plans. You know why we're doing this. Danzo has to die for his crimes against us and against Aura. He has committed so many horrible crimes and nobody has done a damn thing to stop him. Bzo and those foolish elders that side with him need to die. Tori, we have to do something to put things right. For your information, I do trust Aura. She has been betrayed by Koha as well. She has suffered at Danzo's hands. She understands better than anyone what we're going through because of that man and because of Koha's hypocrisy. So why, Tamari, why would you betray me like this? Because you're a lousy father. Ever since mother died, you've been getting worse and worse. It's like we're not even your kids anymore. We're just your tools to be used and cast aside when we act. That's why, father, Tamari said, glaring at him angrily, frowning deeply at his daughter. Rossa shook his head and said, then you're a fool. We cannot survive with a Dio screwing us over the way he has been. I'm doing all of this so you can survive. I've been pushing you 3 harder than any oath. Because I care, because I have high expectations for you. Hor actually wants to help us here as and lets the elders and Danzo get away with everything, including abusing their Jin Chui. That boy Naruto Yamaki, he has so much potential and it's being squandered in this wretched village. I had hoped you 3 would have befriended him, but it's too late for that now. Russell leaned against the door and stared at his children. I'm choosing to do this for our people and for you, but it appears to me that none of you appreciate my efforts or what I've been through trying to fix everything. So I swear to you now, if you betray me in your village, I will put you down. I love you, you are my children, but I can't let you 3 ruin everything we have worked so hard for. Now will you obey or do you want to push your luck with me? Deary frowned at him and said, but Koha is our ally. You're betraying their true saint all for your own vendetta. You're being a hypocrite. Bazik Gay sighed heavily and shook his head in mild disbelief. No, Tamari, Koha is only our ally on paper. In truth, they've been screwing us over for years. We have no obligation to back them up when they're in the wrong. Looking calmly into his eyes, he asked, did you know the Kenoa betrayed the Uzumaki clan? Gari frowned and asked, what does that have to do with anything? Brasa narrowed his eyes at her and said, just listen. The people of Yashiakar were allied with Koha. The Uzumaki helped them with everything. They fought beside them, bled with them and died for them. They were a loyal and strong clan that valued family above all else. They cherished their bonds and believed in Koha and its Hokage almost to a fault. However, when Yashiakar fell under attack, Koha didn't repay them many favors they owed. In fact, Aura found proof that Erzan and Danzo conspired together to get rid of the Uzumaki clan once and for all. The Uzumakis had served their purpose and were no longer needed. In fact, Danzo even provided the enemy forces with a secret to enter Zashiakar undetected. They never saw it coming. The Uzumakis were wiped out. Naruto Zaki is one of, if not the last Yamaki. Aura wants to protect him and keep him safe from people like Herzan Singh. The 4th Kazekage closed his eyes and shook his head again. Aura has also warned me about a group of S-rank missing men that are targeting the Jingui scattered throughout the nations. They planned to rip the Baiu from their hosts and seal them into a statue known as the demonic statue of the outer path. What you don't know is that once a B is ripped free from its host, here he looks straight into Gunk eyes. The Jin Shui dies. I do not want that for you, Gaia. I don't want that for Naruto. I will not let the Akatsuki have you looking straight into Tamar's eyes. At this point he said, so you see, Tamari Koha is in some great village without sin. They have done terrible monstrous things just as they betrayed the Uzumakis. They have betrayed us as well. Only I plan to strike first and put things right no matter what it takes. So I will ask you again, Tamari, you cease this foolish behavior, or will you betray me and your people for Harrison in this village? Diri looked down at the floor as she pondered over what she should do or even what she could say in response to everything she had just rned. After a time she looked into her father's eyes and asked, so you and Aura want to protect the Jinu Ri? You want to protect Gaia? Seeing him nod, the blonde said, you sure have a funny way of showing you care about us. So I'm sorry, father, but I can't go through with this invasion. I know they're in the wrong, but as Koha Ali we have a duty to aid them, not hurt them. You seem to have forgotten that. Rasa shook his head in disappointment. And how do you two feel? He asked, looking at Kanguro and Gaia. Anuro frowned and shook his head. I don't know. Looking into Tamar's eyes at this point he said, sorry sis B. Uday refused to betray Suna like this. Yeah, dad's kind of an but I love our home. I won't betray our village. Demari's eyes widened after hearing that. Turning to Gaia she asked, Gaia, what about you? Gaia shook her head and said, I feel no loyalty for our village. I feel no loyalty for our father, and I do not feel loyal to Aura. I will not defend Sunakar, but I won't help Koha either. I will continue on as I have been, living solely for myself. Diri looked horrified as she realized that neither of her siblings had her back. Turning to her father she screamed in fright when he was mere inches away. Brasa shook his head in pity for his daughter. I am sorry, Tamari, truly I am. And with that he stabbed his daughter through the heart as she collapsed against him, the life slowly leaving her. He closed his eyes and said, goddamn it. Anuro stared in horror as he watched his sister die. He didn't think that his own father would murder one of them in cold blood. The puppeteer was scared and realized very quickly that he needed to be extra careful so he didn't meet the same fate as his sister. Damn it, Tamari, why did you have to be so stupid? A's eyes were wide as she stared at her sister as Rosa laid Tamari's body on the floor. The Redid wasn't entirely sure how she should feel. She wasn't close to her family, then again she wasn't close to anyone. The only thing she lived for was herself. Still, something about Tamari's death rubbed her the wrong way. Looking at her father, Gia debated with herself on what she should do now. As if sensing his daughter's inner debate, Rasa turned to her and said, don't do something foolish, Gaia. I cannot kill you here, not without freeing the Achibi, but if you cross me I have ways to deal with you. If you know what's good for you, you'll do as I say. Once we're back in Sunaga, we can discuss things further if you're so inclined to do so. The younger Redid looked down at her hands and said, very well, I'll cooperate. Closing her eyes she continued to go over everything in her head. Just by looking at her one could easily tell that she was conflicted. On the one hand, Tamari was her sister, on the other they really weren't close, and Gia didn't really care about either of her siblings, and yet for some reason seeing her older sister cut down in such a way by their own father of all people left a bad taste in her mouth. I need to be stronger, strong enough to kill this man, she decided. Brasa scowled at her for a moment before looking down at Tamari. Taking out a scroll he sealed her body inside before pocketing it. Walking towards the door he glanced at Kanguro and said, keep an eye on things in my absence, Kanguro, do not let me down. And with that he exited the room to go and handle some business. Left alone with Gaia, the black-clad teen shivered nervously. Funk, I absolutely cannot tell anyone about this, but Tamari, feeling tears trickling down his cheeks, he fell to his knees and buried his face in his hands. This isn't right. How could things end up like this, all because Gaia funked up and Baka got himself killed? Things have spiraled so far out of control. I might as well just kill myself and get it over with. Stared at her brother apathetically for a time before she stood up and went to leave the room. Pausing for a moment she glanced back at her brother almost as if she As trying to decide on something soon enough she shook her head and exited the room. She needed to go and be alone. Why do I feel so angry? Why am I sad? I am not used to these emotions. If mom was alive I suppose I would have gone to her. In this case I need. Clenching her hands into fists she began to shake as she paused in the hallway. I don't know what I need. Maybe some fresh air would help. Borka was rather curious when she saw Asa approaching her. She was currently in one of her underground hideouts just outside the village. Sure, she had given him access to her hideouts just in case they needed someplace safe to talk, but this time she knew something was wrong, so looking into his eyes she asked what happened. Rasa tossed a scroll containing his daughter's body to her. When she caught it he said, my eldest daughter was planning to betray us. She decided it was a good idea to tell the Hokage about our plans. I had to kill my own daughter because of this plan. Bork's eyes widened in horror and she asked, your own daughter? We could have found another way. Rasa, you, but why did this? Rosa narrowed his eyes at her and asked why. Because I can't let anything or anyone foil our plan, not even my own children. I have to think about my village first. Family comes second to that. Why are you trying to tell me you would have done any differently? The great Sandan shook her head to keep herself from saying anything that might trigger the man's temper. She still needed him, but no, you do what you have to do. It's not easy, but doing the right thing never is. I can't believe she'd be so foolish as to rat us out. To Harrison, tossing the scroll back to Rasa, she asked, what about Gia? I had hoped to hear news about her. Shek, the one I was so angry with, if you recall. Rasa shook his head and said, shish. He refuses to obey my will. She told me pretty clearly that she is only in it for herself. I can't be sure just what she'll do. Aura frowned and said, so in other words, it doesn't matter if it's an enemy or an ally. She feels no sense of loyalty to anyone but herself. If anyone can help set her on the right path, it would be Naruto Uzumaki. If you need the help we could discuss things after the invasion, not right now. Rasa frowned at the mention of Naruto. You think very highly of this Naruto using Zaki. I have nothing against a boy, but I can't help but wonder, why do you have so much faith in him? The snake Sandan smiled and said something about Naruto draws people to him. He inspires hope in the people he meets. He makes people feel good about themselves. It's a little hard to put into words. Just know that he's a very special young man. I just know that if he and Gia met he'd be able to break through her shell and inspire her to believe in people again. She'd learned not to live just for herself but for those she cherishes. However, seeing where she was going with her line of thought, Rosa sighed and began to massage his temples. Any trust she might have had in me is gone. I killed her sister right in front of her. Shek closed herself off more than ever, and as a result Borka nodded and said, not even Nudo may be able to help her anymore. Tell me, why was Tamari considering talking to Herzan? Brasa scowled and looked Aura in the eyes with a narrowed gaze. Because somebody had Baki killed. Tori panicked. I won't apologize for ordering Baki's death. Gaia killed one of her allies, one of my Janine. Baka just watched on without a care in the world. He just let it happen. I had hoped you would have been able to put things right. Things truly have spiraled out of control now, haven't they? I'm sorry you were put in such a situation. Rasa Aura said. The Kazekage shook his head and said, just promise me that you won't let Danzo get away. If you can exterminate that piece of __, then I won't have any complaints. Of course Danzo will not escape my wrath. I'd make him suffer before killing him, but he's far too slippery for that. No, it's best to put that man down fast and hard. Aura said. Good, Rasa said before turning and making for the door. However, he paused and glanced over his shoulder at the Snan. Tell me something. Whereas Naruto Uzumaki, I would have expected to hear something about him by now. Borka frowned at him and said, if you must know, Nudo is safe outside of the village. He is where no one will hurt him ever again. Once I am able I will go to him. Brasa nodded in acceptance of her answer. Very well, do take care, San. And with that he left the room and disappeared down the hallway. Once she was alone again, Aura clenched her fists angrily and thought, what kind of monster kills their own child? If I didn't need his help I'd kill him for daring to commit such a heinous crime. Damn it, oh Naruto, I could really use you right now. Sighing softly she decided to simply return to her work. I wonder what You're up to now Naruto Naruto Suo. This is Kamiko-ha. Naruto questioned as he looked upon the naked woman floating in the tank before him. What exactly is wrong with her? Giko stepped up beside him and said Kimiko has a rare lung disease that's slowly killing her, keeping her in suspended animity. Unlike this helps to prolong her life until we can find a cure. Looking into her love's eyes, she said, I think you'd like her. Naruto She's truly loyal to those she comes to care for. You two would be really great friends. I think. Naruto frowned slightly as he looked from Kamiko into Kiko's eyes. Ko-chan, you're the best medic I know. Are you telling me you can't cure her? The silver-haired beauty frowned sadly and shook her head. I'm afraid not. Naruto I'm hoping that Tsunade Senju can cure her, but we need to find and convince her to come with us. That's actually where you come in. Naruto working a brow in curiosity. Naruto asked, how can I help? I doubt she'd listen to me. We don't even know each other. Giko placed a light kiss upon his cheek before saying, Tsunade was close to your mother. Kha actually chose her to be your godmother. However, things didn't exactly work out. The third HOK wouldn't even permit her to see you. In fact, he and Danzo colluded together to trick her into believing you were dead. They even presented the body of a baby boy to convince her you were gone. They put a lot of work into fooling Herring. She turned to look at Kimiko. Tad has been wallowing in misery. Since that day she feels like she lost absolutely everything. First her little brother, then her fiancé Dan, then Kina, and finally you. During the upcoming invasion, some of our agents will procure a few items hidden away in the Hawk's office. First is the Scroll of Seals, the second is Hen's little black book. That book is where he writes down every crime he's committed and all of his secrets that he'd like to stay buried. Don't ask me why he keeps evidence lying around like that, but it's something people like him do. It's really odd. Shrugging it off, she looked back into Naruto's eyes and said, in why ways? Once you and Ora saw Tsunade, we'll give her the book. It contains information on why her brother and Dan were killed. They had grand dreams, both of them wanting to be someday so they could make things better than they were. They were willful and confident in themselves. Paizen couldn't have the tea. Woe of them being Hokage, though. No, he needed someone more malleable, someone that would listen to his advice and continue to work out Herzen's will. He was too old to continue with the job, but he never wanted to let go of the control he felt with that job. Your father was sadly the fool that Hin decide. Dida passed to hat onto Boruto, phased and let out an agonized groan. Funking hell, my father really was a naive fool, wasn't he? Seeing Kuo nod the blonde sight in exhaustion. Why mom ever married him is lost on me. If he was such a puppet without a mind of his own, you'd think she'd have found someone else to be with. Jaco smirked at him before asking, and miss you being born into the world? Not a chance, I wouldn't have it any other way. Seeing him blush slightly, she smirked and said, you know, we can be alone for a while. I'm feeling a little nipping at nuts here. She slowly moved down and began nibbling and kissing his neck, leaving the occasional hickey. Frisky. Naruto looked into Kiko's eyes and smirked at her. I do believe it's time to pay you back for all the teasing. I think I'll start by making you scream my name. Maybe I leave and impregnate you. Once I'm inside of you, you won't be able to resist me. All the silver-haired medic blushed at the raunchy images running through her brain. Then without a word she pounced on Naruto, knocking him to the floor. Leaning in close, she kissed Naruto passionately and began tearing at his clothes. Need you now? The blonde simply smirked wher and said, you didn't say place. Maybe I should punish you. Capturing her lips with his again, he began to remove Kiko's clothes, a large grin on his face. It didn't take much longer for them to begin making love right in front of the sleeping Kimiko. Not that the two of them would have cared either way. No, they were more interested in each other at this moment in time. All that mattered in this moment was the pleasure and showing each other just how much they felt for one another. Day of the finals, the Kazekage couldn't help but scowl as he looked down at the arena floor. Chancing a glance beside him at the Hokage, he asked, is it customary here for so many Janine to be missing on the day of the final matches? Parizen frowned deeply and shook his head. No, it is not. I cannot speak for the others, but I know Naruto would have been here by now. Something's wrong. Damn it. On Hen's other side sat the Raikage, though Rasa wasn't in Interested in the man at all, he was simply a giant massive muscle with no brain in his head as far as Rasa was concerned, so instead he glanced to his other side at the Itoka-ge, and in truth this was just a disguised clone of Ora, considering she was preparing to slaughter Danzo and the entirety of his root forces. He best not fail, Ora. If you let him escape, I'll take it out on you. Elsewhere in the audience at the various Keno Hayden and that had failed to make it into the finals, Kiba and Ni were both scowling as they glared down at the nearly vacant arena floor. Where the hell is everyone? Kiba grinned. Out. At least Naruto should have shown up. He wouldn't miss something like this for anything. Ino shook her head and said Sakura is not there either. It's like everyone has taken the day off. Though thinking about Naruto, Ino couldn't help but rub her thighs together. Damn it, I can't stop thinking about that. Beep. Sakura gets to go for a good ride on that thing and I'm stuck with absolutely nothing. I've tried to get myself off, but I'm just so hot and bothered these days that I can't get rid of that itch. I need him. Where the hell is he? What the heck is this? There's only 4 people down there. All the off. Our competitors can't just be missing, can they? Tenten questioned. Something clearly wasn't right here, but she couldn't quite piece together what the hell was happening. Ni frowned and shook his head. Whatever is going on, they're making a mockery of the Tunin exams. If they weren't going to show up, then Omnibus should have been given the chance that they're squandering. Tiba scowled and brought a hand to his empty eye socket. The least Naruto could have done was show up. I wanted to see what the hell else he could do. I hope to see him get crushed in the finals. He deserves it for what he did to me. Shio frowned for a moment as he looked around. Has anyone seen him? She appears to be missing as well. Ni scoffed and said, so what? She's a weakling and shouldn't have even been entered into these exams to begin with. I say good riddance. Tiba glared at Ni, but he refrained from saying anything to the arrogant Ouch bag. Instead he turned to stare at the HOK when he began to give his speech. Hanad has been missing for a few weeks now. I hope she's okay. As Hizen looked around and gave his speech, he could tell that the visiting guests and the locals alike were feeling quite agitated. There would be a distinct lack of entertainment for them, what with only 4 genin appearing for the final matches, Rockla, Amoy Gaia and Zaku Pumi. But where the hell are the rest of them? This makes no sense. Once his speech was done, Horizon sat back down and began to massage his wrinkled forehead. I'm sorry, I truly don't know what has become of all the participants. This doesn't make any sense. Ba the Rig-Gay frowned and shook his head. They are making a mockery of these exams. Hokage, I do hope more will show up before their matches, otherwise these are going to be a very boring set of fights. Pizen nodded and said, you're right, of course. Snapping his fingers, he waited for one of his Ambu to approach. When he did, her Ison whispered in his ear, find Yuga and get her to tell you what the hell happened to Naruto, Yamaki and Sakura. Haruno, now of course. Hokage-sama, what will you do in the meantime? The U asked. Horizon shook his head and said, I'll stall for as long as I can. Let's just hope these first few matches drag on for a while and give the other participants a chance to show up. Hurry, right, the U said before he disappeared with his fellow U to begin the search for Yuga and her missing students. As he watched heroin beginning to break down, Rasa couldn't help but smirked behind his veil. Oh, how easy you would be to kill right now, but no, I shall bide my time and deal with you another day. The main goal here is to keep you distracted so you don't find out the truth before it's too late. Bor and her chosen team consisting of Yuga, Yor and Yino were currently in the underground where Danzo and his root liked to hide. Danzo clearly knew they were coming for him, as his root were there to hound them every step of the way. However, they were all disguised, so Danzo wouldn't know the identities of the intruders until It was far too late. After slaughtering a rather large number of forces, Ora stopped her team outside of the door. Danzo's in there. I want you all to be very, very cautious. Do not look him in the eyes. I refused to assist him when he demanded I help him with his sick experiments, but there's a chance he could have a Sharingan implanted in his right eye behind his bandages. I don't know what other tricks he might have up his sleeve. Taking a moment to think on it, she continued, his bodyguards are Fuyum, Manaka and Torami. They are incredibly dangerous. I expect you 3 to work together and take them both. Quickly, do not hesitate and do not attempt to take them prisoner. Go for the kill immediately. I'll deal with Danzo personally. I don't want any of you to die, so please be careful. The 3 agents nodded an understanding before watching as Ora counted down from 3 when the final finger curled down. And they burst into the room and immediately went on the attack. They weren't willing to listen to any of Danzo's egotistical rambling. No, they were going to take them down as quickly as they could, whether their opponents were ready for it or not. Anzo smirked cruelly as he dodged Ora's attempts to strike high. Down with a kunai. If it isn't Ora, that disguise could never fool the likes of me. Come back to kill me after all this time. It's too bad you can't touch me, isn't it? He taunted with a sadistic grin on his face. Do tell me you enjoy whing yourself out to the Genu Riki. I suppose if he's going to be good for something, it would be a pleasurable funk, wouldn't it? He's not exactly the most skilled specimen ever, but I suppose he could serve a purpose. Tell me, where is Nudo Yamaki? It's clear to me that he is no longer in Koha. What, did you spirit him away after realizing the sex was too good to pass up? I can't see any other reason you'd be so interested in that failure of a shinobi. Then again, Anzo grimaced when Ora sliced into his good arm, damn near cutting clean through his arm. Glaring at his opponent, he decided to screw with her mind a bit more and get in her head. If he could get her to make one small mistake, he'd have her. You loved that foolish Minato boy, didn't you? What, couldn't have him, so you went for his son? That's pathetic, and you know it. Admit it, you were ashamed because Minato chose a younger woman over you. You're old and likely incapable of siring a child without some manner of hell. Not even Yamaki can help you there. Tell me, how does it feel knowing that you can't give Nudo the one thing he's desired more than anything else? A family. Ora growled and lifted her head to glare into his good eye, swinging her kunai at his face. She soon paused when Danzo grinned and said, "You're mine. Now be a good girl and kill your friends, would you?" Bork eyes widened in horror as she realized what was happening. No, I can't let this happen. Naruto, Horizon had just finished giving his customary speech, though he honestly wished he could drag it out for longer than he had. His mind was more used on figuring out what the hell had happened to the village's Jin Chui. Damn it, they still haven't found him. The other competitors don't matter, but we need Nudo, so where the hell is he? They taking his seat. The aged Hokage brought a hand to his face and let out an agonized groan. Where the hell is everyone? Lowering his hand, he looked at the other Kage seated nearby. I'm not accusing any of you of any wrongdoing, but do any of you happen to have some clue about where everyone is? Something is very wrong here. So many competitors going missing isn't a coincidence. No, something terrible is happening. They looked at Harry's in for a time before saying, I haven't a clue what happened to them, but I do agree with you, this is no coincidence. Are you sure they didn't kill each other outside of the exams? Rasa scowled at this point and said, I know why my daughter hasn't arrived. She was found dead just the OT. Her day. If I were you, Hokage Dono, I do something about the people in your village. I do not take kindly to my daughter being murdered in your village. I should never had to kill you, Tamari. If only you had used your head and not threatened our plan before. Harrison could say anything in response. Itoka spoke up. Dosu was killed as well and Kin has gone missing. I do not know if she still lives. Glaring into the H's eyes, she said, I'm beginning to wonder if it's normal for foreign ninja to die so suddenly in your village. Trying to weed out the competition, perhaps. The Hokage clenched his fists angrily and said, no, it is not, but that does sound like something Danzo Shimura would do. Damn it, I'm sorry for your losses. I know that one excuse what has happened, but Brasa shook his head and said, you should have dealt with that man before this point. Okay, enough of this though, let's just watch matches and try to forget about this conversation for the time being. A chance to glance at the Kazekage and then at the Itokage. Frowning slightly, he thought they're going after Danzo themselves. Curious. Oh well, it is not my problem. Pies inside frustratedly before he tapped his headpiece. Start first match. Hopefully the others will be found soon. Down below, Genma looked up at the Hok for a moment and not at once. Afterwards he dismissed Jia and Zaku once they were gone. Genma declared first match Rock Lee vs Amoy. Begin. Ora Bzo grinned victoriously as he watched Ora slowly turn her back to him. Kill them, he commanded. However, when she didn't move, he scowled and exclaimed, I command you to kill them now. Ora turned back to Dano and began to cackle maniacally. Then before Danzo could grasp what the hell was happening, the aura in front of him suddenly exploded, catching Danzo off guard. He Didn't even throw up some kind of defense against said explosion. At this moment Aura's allies finished off Fu and Torin, severing their heads and torching them. Looking at Danzo's down form, they could easily see that his right arm and left leg had been blown completely off, his body was charred, and he as currently struggling just to stay alive. Yino smirked at him as she looked at him, being careful not to look into his eyes. Did you really think it would be that easy? Danzo Shimura. Danzo coughed up blood and rolled onto his side, wincing in agony as he did. What happened? I won this can't be pos. Ibelbor stepped out of the shadows and giggled to herself. You wasted your technique on a clone, Danzo. I came prepared for all of your tricks this entire time. A single clone has been cutting down your root forces and battling you. Face it, you were outsmarted and you will die without ever having a mount. To anything. Farewell, you rotten monster, may you rot in hell. Oh, how Danzo wished he could capture the real Aura in a genjutsu powerful enough to slay her allies. However, a thought came to him and he looked at the other three in the room. Clones too? Yoro simply grinned and said, no, we are in clones. Oh. NLY Auras-sama, it was certainly fun taking their lives with our own hands. Too bad for you. Anzo smirked idly to himself even as he continued to bleed out on the floor. Good job, Sai, he said before the life finally left his eyes. Aura blinked in confusion for a moment before she saw the young man appear behind Yi. Before she could even call out to him to move, Yo's head fell off of his body. As his body fell, Aura's hands clenched into fists and she prepared to act. However, when Sai went to strike down Yuga next, she spun around and began a fierce sword duel with Danzo's final agent. Bisha was waiting for right moment to jump in and finish Sai off. However, when he managed to slip inside Yuga's guard and stab her through her left leg, her eyes widened in horror as her purple-haired companion stumbled backwards, leaving herself open for Sai's next attack. Quickly utilizing the replacement technique with Yuga, Yino quickly thrust her sword through Sai's forehead, piercing his brain in the process. As Sai's body dropped to the ground, Yino winced as she placed a hand to the wound Sai had managed to inflict. In the end, looking down, she saw that her belly had been sliced open and she was bleeding profusely. Tears began to stream down her cheeks as she fell to her knees. Oh, Aura-sama. Aura quickly hurried over to Yino and began to survey the damage done to her friend. Yino, just hold on, I'll save you. Isino giggled ruefully and said, face it, Aura-sama, there's no healing this wound. Iun-sama was here. The snake Sandon had tears streaming down her cheeks as she held Yino in her arms. I am so sorry. I shouldn't have put you in such a dangerous situation. This is not your fault, Yino exclaimed angrily. I chose to serve you, or Kasama. I was more than willing to sacrifice my life to make you happy with a man you love. I have no regrets. I'm just sorry I won't get to see Nudo again. I was hoping. As Yo's eyes began to close, Aura held her tighter and began to sob. I know you would have been my maid of honor. I love you, Yino. You're dear to me. I'm really going to miss you. I didn't know about that boy. Hold have. Bisha simply giggled weakly and patted Aura's cheek very lightly. Don't blame yourself, Aura-sama. I'll always watch over you. After Yino perished in her arms, Aura clenched her eyelids shut tight and quivered as she simply held Yino close. After taking a while to grieve, she laid her friend down and moved over to examine Yuga's injury. Looking it over, she said, you'll be okay, Yuga. It's not a fatal wound, but you won't be able to walk on that leg for a while. I'll get you out of Koha. We're going back to Akar where it's safest. I can't believe we just lost two of our own. Damn it, Buga winced in but offered her master a smile. It's okay, Aura-sama. We knew the risk going into this mission. They died with no regrets. We love you just as you cherish and love us. Now come on, let's get out of here and go back home. Bor sealed Yino and Yo's bodies into a couple of sealing scrolls. Afterwards she created a clone to carry Yuga, seeing as she couldn't possibly walk on her own right now. Finally she created 3 more clones to essentially ransack Danzo's office, taking whatever they could that might prove useful later on. Once they were gone, Orica wiped away her tears and thought, you've taken so much from me, Danzo. I never wanted to lose 2 of my friends, not like this. Arena. The battle between Rockle and Amo had been an intense one so far. Whilst Lee had speed and strength on his side, Amoy had a bit more experience under his belt. However, while Amoy was doing an admirable job of keeping up with Lee and fending him off. It was obvious that he was slowly losing ground. Amoy had been getting slower as the match progressed and everyone could tell he was getting tired while Lee seemed to still have quite a lot of energy to burn through. Realizing that he was losing the battle, Amoy grumbled irritably himself as he thought over his options. If he continued the fight, he knew he would lose unless he managed to get a lucky hit in. However, he knew that with Lee's speed it would be hard as hell to land the decisive blow. Then he came to the realization that sometimes you have to know your own limitatio. Right now he couldn't win against his opponent. He had reached his limit for this particular battle. However, this didn't mean he couldn't get stronger and faster. After training for a while so well, he might not be able to challenge Lee today. If he kept up with his training, he knew he could best even the mighty green beast of Koha Singh. Amoy raised his hand and said, "I forfeit. I just can't keep up with my opponent. He seems to be getting even stronger while I'm getting more and more exhausted." Once the proctor called the match in Lee's favor, Amoy walked up to his opponent and shook hands with him as a sign of respect. Up above horizon felt like taking a bite out of his hat. He was so frustrated. He had hoped that the first match would have lasted a while longer to give his time to find Yuga and her students. Damn it, where the hell could they all be? Did Aura have something to do with their disappearance? She couldn't have SK, so did she take Nudo in his place? No, that doesn't make sense. What the hell is going on? The Otokage frowned as the next combatants were called down to the arena. She knew that the real Aura had trained Zaku hard for this fight, but at the same time he was up against Gia. Gia was as unstable an individual as they come, and she had already proven that she didn't differentiate between friend and foe. Everyone was fair game in her eyes. Thesi, you'd better stick to the plan and use that game jutsu. I don't want to see another one of my gen and be killed by that, as if sensing his comrade's unease, Ross looked at Or's clone out of the corner of his eye and said, "If you don't want another of your gen and to die at the hands of my daughter, I suggest you convince him to forfeit the match now, otherwise she's likely to kill him." BCA's clone glared at Rasa and whispered SHLY to him, "I bet you wouldn't even lift a finger to stop her, would you?" Seeing him simply smirk at her, the clone turned her gaze towards Gaia and Zaku as they took their places in the arena. "Please, Miss Yumi, don't let Zaku die." As the fight got underway, Zaku immediately went on the defensive, avoiding tendrils made of sand as they lashed out at him, attempting to strike him down. The Oto Gen and knew that he had to stay on the move to avoid being killed by the psychopathic Shiniki he was up against. He had learned a lot under Aura's guidance, but even she admitted that his best bet was to just keep on the move and try to get in close enough to unleash his decapitating airwaves attack where Gia's defense was the weakest. Unfortunately, he wasn't quite sure how to go about doing that, considering the Psycho had what a lot of people referred to as the ultimate defense. After dodging for a while, trying to slip and close, Zaku breathed a sigh of relief when feathers began to rain from the sky. This was the sign that the invasion was starting, and with Gaia as their secret weapon, he figured she'd do her damn job and not kill him. Sadly, this was not the case. He ensnared Saku's leg before slamming him into the ground a couple of times, grinning sadistically as she broke his bones. Afterwards, she commanded her sand to swallow him whole before clenching her fist tight as she saw another of Gen and perish at the hands of that psychotic little Aura's clone quivered in anger before she turned Dion Rosa and exclaimed, "Get that under control already. She just killed another of my Janines." Seeing him smirk at her, she clenched her fists angrily and shouted, "You sick bastard, don't you dare smirk at me like that." Brasa simply shrugged and said, "Gia makes the perfect weapon. She's emotionless and more importantly, she is ruthless. So long as she obeys me, I care not who she chooses to kill or why. Perhaps you should have done your homework so that little Aku could have been spared." Aura's clone snarled but didn't respond right away when Rasa turned to attack the HOK. As per his and Aura's plan, the clone couldn't take it anymore. Taking hold of a kunai, she moved in close and proceeded to stab Rasa numerous times in the back before finally letting him drop to the ground. As he lay there bleeding out, slowly dying from his wounds, he looked into the clone's eyes and scoffed dismissively. He should have
Seen this coming the moment I killed Tamari. I figured you didn't trust me, but it would seem I pushed things a little too far this time. Oh well, I suppose I'll be seeing you in hell someday. Monsters like us wouldn't be permitted entry into heaven. Just keep up your end of the bargain. Save my payo. Ple is the life left Ross's eyes. Ora's clone looked at the Hokage who had watched the murder with wide eyes. Hokage-sama, I'm sorry you had to see that, but this is the second of my gen and to die at Jia's hands. I was furious. Pison nodded slowly but didn't say a word in response. Instead he turned to gaze out at the audience that had been put to sleep courtesy of the mass gain jutsu. Just what is going on here? Is this Ora's doing? What does any of this accomplish? Ora's clone frowned to herself and went to speak, only for the Rage to interrupt her. So an invasion during the Tunin exams and by Odo and D. Suna no less. Normally I'd beat you senseless at Toage, but I have something else in mind. Then before Harry's in and Ora's clone could react, the Rage activated his lightning armor technique. A second later Anhen was sent flying, grunting in agony as he could feel some bones breaking. I'd be a fool not to take this opportunity presented to me. The Itoka-ge clenched her fists tight but couldn't find it in herself to say anything. If she could, she would have killed the Rage for daring to pull the stunt. However, she was just a clone and couldn't possibly stand up to the chancing a glance at her old sensei. She thought, damn it, this is taking away Nutke rightful kill, is denying Nudo his chance at vengeance. I have to do something, but what can I do? Kin K Nuchi knew that assassinating her target would be a trial. She had waited for the game jutsu to be cast before she slipped in close to Iji and prepared to strike him down. Sure, he had broken out of the game jutsu easily enough, but he soon had to contend with a number of Odo and Suna ninja. This kept his attention off of her and allow her to creep ever closer as Niji struck down one of the Sunagar ninja and turned to do battle with another. She knew that he could see her coming closer, however she smirked as she jingled a few bells, capturing him in a sound-based game jutsu. Sure, he could see through pretty much any game jutsu, but a sound-based game jutsu still screwed with his equilibrium and caused him to stumble, nearly passing out in the process. Then once he was off balance, she gripped a kunai tied and slipped in close before the Hyuga could react. She slit Ni's throat and smirked wickedly to herself as she watched him struggle to breathe. However, she knew that even though he was now on the brink of death, he might still be able to get in a lucky shot before dying. So with the same kunai she stabbed him numerous times in the chest, piercing his heart in the process as he began to collapse. Kin said, good riddance, filth. That was for Hinata and everyone else you've ever heard. Sadly, Kin's sense of victory was short-lived. After watching Ni's body drop to the ground, Kin began turning to find her next target, only for a hail of weapons to pierce her body. Coughing up blood, she turned her gaze on the one who had just struck her. Sure enough, as she thought, it was Tenten, Ni's teammate, Kin said before collapsing to her. Kne Venton scowled at the Odo Genin and shouted, how dare you kill Ni, and I loved him, damn you. Then before the heavily wounded Kin could raise even the smallest defense, Tenten severed her head from her body, glaring at Kin's head as it began to roll. The weapon's mistress of Koha threw kunai into the center of its forehead just for good measure. As the weapon's mistress became surrounded by a group of Odin ninja, she knew that she was likely going to die. She knew that Lee was probably fighting elsewhere in the stadium, and she had seen her sensei Mgai battling a Kakashi Hitaki side earlier. The odds of either of them showing up to save her were pretty slim. She highly doubted that anyone else would arrive in time to save her life, so deciding on a course of action, she unfurled a couple of scrolls and leapt straight up into the air, raining weapons upon her enemies. If I die here, then I'm taking as man. Why have you down with me as I can. While her attack killed the majority of her enemies, a few of them had escaped with only minor injuries. She knew that she was in trouble, considering she had just unleashed the majority of her weapons upon them. So as soon as she touched the ground again, she grabbed her nearest weapon, a curved sword that resembled a scimitar. It wasn't the most practical weapon, but it would serve her purposes well enough. Quickly dashing towards her nearest foe, she prepared to end his life, only to suddenly freeze in place. Blinking a few times in confusion, she glanced over her shoulder and saw what she thought was another Kohan ninja. Mitsugi stood there smirking at her like he knew something she didn't. Then when she got a closer look at his headband she grimaced in realization, __, and with that single word being uttered she soon collapsed to the ground dead as can be. Once she was dead, Mumi approached Kin's body and shook his head sadly. Orate isn't going to like this. I need to get out of here before the same thing happens to me, he thought silently to himself before he looked at his fellow Odo ninja. Do what you need to do and then get the hell out of here. I don't want our master to lose any more of her. Ninja, get going. As the ninja saluted him and dispersed, Miss Yumi looked around at all the dead bodies before shaking his head once more. Before anyone could do the same to him, he vanished to make his way to one of Aura's hideouts within the village. Things have G12__, real fast. Aura-sama, I sincerely hope you and the others are okay. Pissin, the third Hokage, grunted as he pushed himself back on his feet, spitting out a glob of blood. He glared into the Raikage's eyes and asked, why the hell are you doing this after what you did last time? Shouldn't that Avenue been enough? Now you want to kill me? The Hokage, knowing that your actions will lead to war. What is the purpose of this, Ray? But chuckled darkly to himself as he shed his shoulders. No hard feelings here. Isn't like I said, though. I'd be a fool to let this opportunity pass through my fingers. Besides, I think you deserve a good beatdown after the stunt you pulled, giving us his Ashi's body in place of the one who really killed our ambassador. Then again, I suppose you did see through our plan. Oh well. Looking at the Otokage, I asked, what are you going to do? It's your people that are invading Koha. Is day I assume you want here is in dead as well, or are you simply hoping to stay out of my way and keep yourself uninvolved in this little affair? B's clone removed her Kage robes and hat, tossing them aside, narrowing her eyes at the Rage. She said, I promise somebody dear to me that I give him all the power he needs to come back here and kill Hen. How am I supposed to tell him that I let you kill the old man without interfering? I hate him just as much, if not more than you do. If I can stay my hand and leave him be, then why can't you? Or are you truly so bloodthirsty? Pissin eyes widened as he looked at the clone of his student. I knew you were here, but I never imagined you would sit so close without trying anything. You killed Sass. Are you behind the disappearances of Yuga, Yuzuki, Sakura, Haruno and Naruto Yamaki? What have you done? Aura's clone fapped itself before glaring at her old sensei. Is now really the time to be questioning me? In case you missed it, he's trying to kill you. I can't match his speed or his strength, and you're no longer in your prime. Chances are high that he's probably going to kill you and me both. I'll do what I can to help you. But before Harrison could reply, I began to loudly. Then without a word of warning he bum-rushed to Hokage and landed another harsh lightning-fueled punch to highs in stomach, sending him flying once again. Turning his gaze to the clone, he asked, helping him? Huh, not too smart of you. I hope you're ready to meet his fate. B's clone looked into A's eyes as calmly as she could. She was trying desperately to come up with some kind of plan, but when she saw him approaching her, the clone knew that her time was likely up. Still, she wouldn't just roll over and die without trying something, so when A appeared in front of her going for one of his lariat attacks, Aura smirked before shooting her head forth and biting deep into A's neck. Yes, the lightning was hurting her, but she managed to give a version of her curse seal. Moments before Aura's clone dispersed in a cloud of smoke, A's armor technique faded and he clutched at his neck and began to scream pain. From there he was further caught off guard when he was struck hard in the back of his head, sending him stumbling forward. As his vision began to swim, he turned to look at Herzen and saw him wielding a staff of adamantine. Son of a Jaizen coughed up some more blood and staggered a bit. How Veer, seeing as how the Rage was struggling to remain conscious after what Orca's clone had done to him, the aged Hokage couldn't help but chuckle to think she'd actually help me. Coughing again, Horizon reached up and wiped away the blood trickling down his chin. Overall he was in bad shape and likely wouldn't survive his internal injuries. However, this was his perfect chance to remove a certain blight upon the world. So slowly staggering up to as he finally lost consciousness, Horizon clenched his staff tight and began to bring it down repeatedly on the Raikage's head until it was a bloody SME.
AR on the ground. Once I was dead. Hin took a few steps back and began to wobble slightly. Sensing this, the staff changed form until Monkey King Enma was standing there supporting his old friend Hyzen. We need to get you to the hospital immediately. They can. The old man coughed up more blood and shook his head. We need Sue. Coughing again, he fell to his knees and chuckled softly to himself. I'm old and so very old and so tired. I've lived a good life. Goodbye, old friend. And with that, Herzen's eyes closed for the final time before the hawk's body could fall forward. Enma caught him and laid him gently on the ground. There is an. Enma said sadly, looking around at the village. He could see buildings on fire, large snakes running rampant throughout the village and more. Then he turned his gaze to the audience and saw that the various ninja from both Suna and Odo were on the retreat. So despite the losses they had suffered, they had managed to repel the invaders. At least your sacrifice wasn't in vain, old friend. Seeing movement out of the corner of his eye, the Monkey King turned and looked at the various bodyguards for the Kage in attendance. He was a little surprised that they hadn't bothered getting involved before now. Moving Herzen's body behind him, the summon animal looked first at the Rei's bodyguards and then at the Kazekage's guards. Then he took notice that there were no guards from Itaker. Shaking himself out of his thoughts, and Ma asked, why didn't you act in defense of your Kage? What's old you be playing at? AR. One of the Reichige's bodyguards shrugged and said, we weren't in agreement with the Raikage. We were meant to guard him. True, but his actions here warranted severe punishment. Because of him there's a very real chance Koha and Kumo could go to war. Now the two of us are no reason to involve ourselves in the affairs of our Raikage. I don't know about them. Looking at Ross's guardians, Enma frowned as they removed their hoods. Who are you and why did you not intervene when your Kag was attacked? One of them, a woman by the name of Pakura, scowled as she glanced back at the body of the Kazekage. Rasa was a scumbag. He murdered his own daughter all to further his own schemes. As far as we're concerned, the world's a better place without a minute. I would appreciate it if Koha forces would allow the four of us, motioning towards the Rage guards and then at herself and her partner to signify who she meant to leave unhindered. We have no interest in seeing their plans come to fruition. I'm not even sure why I stayed in Suna after Rasa tried to have me killed. Benma nodded in understanding before waving his hand dismissively. Take your people and go. I don't want any more needles. Bloodshed. Thank you, Monkey King, Pakura said, bowing to the monkey summon. Afterwards the Kage guardians hurried away, hoping to get far away from Koha as quickly as possible. Once they were gone, Enit turned his attention to the newly arrived. What took you so long to react? In case you missed it, here is in your HOK is dead. The lead Andrew shook his head as he stepped closer. We left as per the orders of Hokage-sama. He wanted us to focus on getting the people to safety and protect key locations. Others were ordered to enter the forest of death and go in search of Yuga, Yuzuki, Naruto, Yamaki and Saku Rao. They've been missing for some time now. Okage seemed sure that Aura was behind their disappearances, but we couldn't find any trace of them anywhere. Well, Enma scowled at the man and asked, what is it? Spit it out. We might not have found them, but we saw evidence of some kind of struggle. There was a OT of blood, yellow and pink hairs, a broken sword that belonged to Yuga. Sighing softly, the lead Yu shook his head and said, we don't know if they're still alive or not, but it didn't look good if Aura is behind their disappearances. Enma scowled and clenched his fist tight. Damn that woman. I told him that he should have killed her while he had the chance. All anyone could do was mourn in the loss of so many and wonder how things could have gotten to this point. Aura. Shortly after slipping into her hideout in the Forest of Death, Aura took Yuga to one of her labs and instructed her to sit on the nearby hospital bed. Afterwards she began to do her utmost best to tend to her friend's wound. How do you feel, Yua? Do you think you be okay? The Viet nodded once and Sadie, be fine. I can make it back to Ateker with you. Karo can heal me once we've arrived. Borika went to say something only for her clone's memories to hit her like a freight train. Clutching at her head in agony, the snake san and scowled and said, damn him, damn all of them, straight to hell. Buga was worried, having not expected such a reaction from her master. Aura-sama, what happened? Aura took a deep breath before looking seriously into Yuga's eyes.
Aya killed Zaku. The invasion began, but closing her eyes, Aura took a few deep calming breaths before speaking again. Rasam, my clone, killed him. After what he said, his casual dismissal of what Gaia had done to yet another of her allies, the dismissal of killing his daughter, it all became too much for my Lone to handle, so she killed Rasa. Then that blasted fool took advantage of all the chaos and attacked Herzen and my clone. I don't know if either of them survived, but I'm fairly certain that at least the Raike has perished. My clone gave him her cursed seal and it seemed to have worked, but I can't be certain what happened after that. Bua frowned but didn't say another word. She just winced and grunted occasionally as Auric attended to her wound. It was at this point that Mumi arrived, walking towards them with a deep frown on his face. Aura-sama, I have bad news. Great, just what we needed. What happened? Miss Yumi? Aura asked before wincing in sympathy for Yuga as she began to suture Yuga's wound. Looking between the two women, the stretchy man looked into Aura's eyes and said, Kin was killed by the Janine known as Tenten. She succeeded in killing her target, but Tenten killed her in turn for killing the boy she loved. I killed her, but Bork eyes widened and she began to shake temporarily for going tending to Yuga's wound. After a time she resumed work on Yuga and said, I damn it. Kin was looking forward to seeing Nudo again. She and Nudo got along well from what I saw during their time spent together. Damn it. Once Aura finished suturing Yuga's wound, she stood up and looking into Mum's eyes. Do you know what became of the Reich and the HOK? My clone didn't see the end of their fight. Isumi shook his head and said, I'm sorry Aura-sama, but I don't know what became of them. It was odd though, the guards that show LD have been there for them just weren't A's guards, just watched without doing anything. The you that were meant to be protecting hers and weren't there either. Actually, now that I think on it, where the hell was Jera? I figured he would have been there. Buao shook her head and said no, Jera was most likely in charge of dealing with Aura's Sama snake summons. He couldn't have been there to protect the Hokage if he was forced to deal with that. Aura nodded in agreement. That's part of the reason I unleashed the Manoa. Period. They were just there to serve as a distraction. Mumi, where are the others? Has everyone escaped? Mumi frowned and shook his head sadly. We lost a lot of people. Or Kusama, the invasion may have been intended to simply serve as a distraction, but we weren't prepared for how hard Koha would fight. Soon as forces and ours were forced to retreat, we need to get out of here and get back to Aaga if we don't want to get captured by the likes of Jer or the others. Aura took a breath to try and calm her frazzled nerves. Once she was finished with Yuga the Snake S and stood straight again and said, lead and go. If the others escape, they'll meet us back in a Tekker in due time after they've thrown any NTIAL pursuers off their trail. I need to get home and see Nudo. This whole mission turned into one giant clusterfuck. Yes, we killed Dano, but sighing sadly she began to lead her friend subordinates towards the exit. The price we had to pay for that one gold was too great. I should have prepared everyone better. There had to be something I could have done to ensure we didn't lose so many lives. As her master began to quiver and sob, Yuga stepped up to her and hugged Aura. Aura-sama, no one will blame you. None of this is your fault. Our people knew what they were getting into. I feel terrible about losing our friends and family, but Missum nodded and said, I can't help but feel like I failed in my duties to you. Or Kusama, I know you cared about those three, but I couldn't do anything to save Kin life. For ZUS, things didn't go our way today, but we did complete one objective. Danzo is dead. I know it's hard. Sing so many people, but we need to hurry and get out of here. I don't trust Ura to let us escape so easily. Aura nodded once as she reached up and wiped away her tears. You're right, Miss Yumi. Of course, lead and hurry. After walking for a while, Aura finally stopped and pressed a hidden button in the wall. The way opened up for the men. Daylight began to trickle in. Aura motioned for Yuga and Mumi to remain hidden for the time being. Stepping out of the hideout, Orica glanced around for a time before she motioned for her subordinates to follow her. They were miles outside of Koha, but until they had reached the land of rice fields, she knew that they weren't truly safe just yet. As they hurried along to the north towards the valley of the end and beyond, even that Orica glanced at Yuga worriedly. She was starting to slow down and the Sannin knew immediately what was wrong, so pausing for a moment she moved
veer to Yuga and lifted her onto her back. Just hold on tight Yuga Wek, get you home and get Kiko to heal you, I promise, just hold on for a while longer. Mumi scowled and shook his head. I think he has other plans. Ora-sama. Ora blinked in confusion for a time before she looked ahead of them. Sure enough, Nding in their way was Jera of the Sannin. She knew it had been upwards of an hour, perhaps longer than that, since their escape from Ka Hagar. Glaring at her once teammate, she said, Jera, please move, I need to get you guys some help. Da scowled angrily at Ora and said she is a traitor and will die as such. Before we get on with it, I want you to answer something for me. Ora, what could you possibly want now? Jera, you know I'm not some kind of horrible person. I'm sure you realize that Danzo was a damn scumbag. You have to know he was lying through his damn teeth when I was chased out. I was a loyal Kanoi of Kana Hawker before that day. Hor said, desperate to get you go back home. Why did you decide to invade Koha? Why did you trick Suna into helping you, and why did you kill Hin? What is wrong with you? Jay exclaimed angrily. Bork eyes widened and she said, Jera, nobody was supposed to die. The invasion was CMPLY meant to be utilized as a distraction so nobody would catch on to the fact that I was going after Danzo. As for Suna, I didn't trick them into helping me. The Wind Dao is outsourcing all missions to Koha once again. That is thanks to Danzo Shimura, and I didn't kill Hen, I killed Rasa for Dar Ing to kill his own daughter and for the rest of his crimes. Then I decided to take advantage of the distraction to attack Sensei. I had left a clone to watch over everything in the arena while I took care of Danzo. My clone tried to help stop the Raikage, but I don't know what happened after my clone dispelled. Is it safe to assume that Sensei died from his injuries because I never touched him? I'll be completely honest with you here, Jera. Despite wanting to kill him myself, I promised someone that I'd train them until they could get their revenge on Hen. I can't do that if I killed him myself. The white-haired man frowned at her but nodded his head in understanding. Based on what I'm seeing, is it safe to assume that you were behind the disappearance of Naruto Uzumaki and Sakura Haruno, and did you have anything to do with Hinata Hua's sudden disappearance? Ora nodded and said, Naruto day Irv's far better than the treatment he was given in Koha. He was suffering there. Jera, you had a duty to look after him as his godfather and you neglected him. Jera, I love Naruto I helped him and his girlfriends to escape so that they could be happy back home with my people and me. Before Urasu LD say anymore, Jera held up his hand, stopping her. I believe you, Ora, I really do. However, a lot of good people were killed on both sides. Even if you had noble intentions and didn't truly mean any harm, you cannot change the fact that a lot of people died. Ora, Koha will declare war on Kamaka for their RT